The self-publishing company Lulu is celebrating its 20-year anniversary. It actually officially happened on February of 2022. And I'm super excited that I was actually able to reach out to a friend of mine, the brand engagement manager, Chelsea Bennett. She's also the face of Lulu University over on YouTube. So if you ever seen her happy, bubbly face on the channel, then you definitely will love this interview that I had with her. She's a great friend, and we go back about, 4 years now. This is actually our friendiversary for the last 4 years. I don't know if she realizes this, that we did our first collaboration in 2018 of March. So it's really great that I get to share with you a momentous occasion, 20 years with Lulu. And you're going to find out all about the ups and downs, ins and outs of working at Lulu and working with authors such as yourself. So let's go ahead and tune into the interview. Lulu has been in the self-publishing game for 20 years. Actually, let me restate that, for 20 freaking years. What are you guys doing to celebrate?
Oh man, well, when you help people publish books or share their story, it really quickly becomes not about you. So, Lulu is a footnote to the literally millions of people that have decided to publish their work with us. So, in celebrating our 20th birthday, which obviously is great, any internet company that is around for 20 years is very exciting. That's a monument, of course. But when we look at it, it's like, wow, we've had the privilege to create something that people can come to from all walks of life, from, all different backgrounds, and share their stories. And so that was one of the coolest things for me going through kind of this 20-year celebration, was looking back from, when we started to today, and all the different forms that people have used us to create, and all the different forms their projects have come through. And it's just been really inspiring and just tremendous to see everything from children's books, memoirs, cookbooks, workout guides, clean eating, bad eating, if there's such a thing, and just the kind of everything in between, all kinds of stories to be told. So, this kind of is a cliche, but it's just really humbling to think like, wow, I'm, again, a very small part of, all these people being able to tell their stories and share it with the world. So pretty flippin' sweet.
Yeah, and sweet indeed. Let's shift to you for just a second. And if anybody has not familiar with this face just yet, I know the audio podcast listeners are like, yeah, like I could see this, Dale. Well, if you subscribe to me on YouTube, you'd know. At any rate, you are the face of Lulu's brand through Lulu University on YouTube. Like, you're on there quite a bit. Has anybody ever come up to you at writing and self-publishing conferences and just start calling you Lulu by mistake?
Yeah, people do make that assumption on our videos. We do get the comment every now and again that, are you Lulu? But I always try to tell people, especially when I go to conferences and do talks or whatever, at the end of it, I'm like, pitching all of our stuff, like follow us on social, go to our website, check us out on YouTube. But I always like to give the caveat, like, if you sat through this presentation and your ears are bleeding, don't look at our YouTube channel, because it's just more of me doing this. So don't check it out. If you hated what you just got a taste of, just go read our blog or whatever. So fortunately, people have been very kind on YouTube, very interesting comments from times, but definitely people do want to know if I am Lulu. I am not.
Who is Lulu? Like, what exactly, do you know the history of why Lulu?
Yes, of course. I will say that probably it might not be Lulu as you know it today if we knew that there was going to be like a leggings company and like a women's dress company that we were competing with. But Lulu has a very sweet origin story. So our founder, Bob Young, who is the co-founder of the software company Red Hat, he called his granddaughters Lulus and his daughters Lulus. And Lulu is an actual word. So it means a remarkable person or object or idea. So it is kind of a myriad of meanings for us. But it all started because Bob, used that word as an affectionate term for his children. And then, with the definition, it just made a lot of sense to bring something remarkable into the world. So that is the origin story.
Interesting. So it's not an insult if anybody ever calls you Lulu at a conference then.
No, I have never insulted at all. But it is funny. I mean, now when I started at Lulu, I remember we would get calls like, hey, I need to return a pair of pants, or I need to return this dress. And we're like, no, you don't. Not us. So yes, a little bit more competition now than I think when he thought, wow, Lulu is the perfect name for this, and now we have the field is a little bit tighter. But
Darn
yes.
you, Lululemon.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, still, I'll see Google reviews come in, and it's like, you got what we literally had one the other day that was like, you got a bad review, and it was a woman who was just complaining about, not being able to return her leggings, and she's been a lifelong fan, and so, the struggle is real, but we're happy to have the name.
You guys should just have a specific department that accepts returns of people's clothes, and you could just take those clothes and then resell them, repurpose them, and and put them back into books.
Let me note that. That's not a bad idea for some additional revenue streams there. Secondhand yoga pants dealers.
Oh man. So Chelsea, how long have you been at Lulu now? It seems, as long as I've been following you, and probably longer, but how long has that been now?
Yeah, so I think this year will be 5 years at Lulu.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of time to just be able to meet authors of ours and friends and fans and kind of see the progression from what self-publishing was even 5 years ago and what it is today. So it's been a fun journey.
It's pretty wild. You have been so busy, and not only are you producing videos for the YouTube channel, you're also doing like these free webinars, which I'm always telling you should call them workshops, because everybody knows you hear webinar, you think you're going to get pitched anything at the end. But no, you guys don't pitch anything. It's literally just giving value. So what was the thought behind doing not just the YouTube channel, but also these free webinars?
Yeah, so I think the YouTube stuff came first, and then we just, saw that a lot of companies out there will do that. And like you said, a lot of them are, lightly veiled pitches for whatever they're selling, which is fine. And they're, whatever. But we just kind of realized, hey, we have these resources and they're free. But at Lulu, our kind of goal has always been give the best resources available to make our authors successful. At Lulu, we are not successful unless our authors are successful, unless they're selling their books, unless they're reaching their audiences in a really impactful way. And so it's in our best interest to equip them with the information, the tools to do that. And the webinar series is a great way for us to highlight, new things that we're seeing in the industry or new platforms that we think are really useful for authors. We've got one next week on direct to author, which is a new discoverability tool for indie authors. So if it is helpful and useful for authors, we want to talk about it. And sometimes that's Lulu. So luckily, I think that we have a lot of good things to share. But a lot of times it's just, what is formatting? How does a self-published author format? Or if you're an indie author, how can you do some self-editing before you hand it off to someone else? Or, holidays, how can I prepare for holiday sales? So we, I think, are just on a continual mission to help our authors be more successful and equip them with the tools they need to do that. And the webinar series has been a great way for us to just reach folks through a different medium and offer our content in a different way.
It's incredible. A lot of people come to me as the go-to resource in self-publishing, and I always try to tell them diversify their information source. And usually comes back with, well, who should I go with? And usually I'm saying Lulu. Go over and watch the YouTube channel, but I'm like, get subscribed to the email newsletter, because they're giving away these free webinars. And I've sat in, I've popped in there. You usually acknowledge me. But, I go into these webinars and I learn quite a bit. You want to make sure you're diversifying. Is there anything that you could share in addition to that and diversifying what authors and self-publishers should learn?
Yes. So, of course, diversifying your content is a great tip, and, no question or no doubt why you are the #1 resource in self-publishing. So I think that's a great, that's a great tip to give authors. But really something I've been trying to talk about more lately is data, reviewing your data. So, I mean, that can come in a lot of different forms, but if you're putting out content on social media, making sure that you're regularly looking at that and seeing what's resonating, what's getting engagement and what isn't. Likewise, if you do have maybe a nonfiction book that you're working on or a nonfiction platform, then doing something like webinars and looking back to see how many people registered, what kind of comments did I get. A lot of tools that you could use to host webinars or, YouTube videos or video content will show you when people are watching and when they're dropping off. So that's great data, but if you're not looking at it, then it's really not serving you like it should. So one of the things that I've been talking about is just using tactics that Amazon uses or big box stores or big chains and brands, they're always looking at their data. They're always refining their marketing efforts based on what the market's telling them. And independent authors, any author can do that for themselves. And the world we live in today, everything that you're doing has some kind of like breadcrumb trail or some sort of analytics for most things. Email, sales data, social media, webinars, video content, all of these things, you have a way to look at how it's performing. So I know that a lot of authors, go with the spray and pray method where you're just putting out everywhere you can and hopefully something will stick and something will resonate. But you don't have to do that. I mean, yeah, right. Start that way. But after you put something out, give yourself a couple weeks, maybe a month, and then go back and see what's working and double down on it. And if it's not, then let it go.
I love it. Very sound advice. You have seen a lot of growth since you've been around the company for about a quarter of its lifespan. What are some innovations at Lulu you're most proud of?
Oh, well, so this one is, I feel like a little bit fluffy, I guess. But my favorite thing to always tout is that we're a B Corp. I mean, I just think that that's so huge. And moving forward, I mean, going back to the data that I was talking about, for any business or anyone who's starting a business or selling books or anything like that, a lot of data that we're seeing now is saying people, you want to spend with companies you care about and that you know that they stand for something that you stand for. So value-based spending and things like that. And more, we as consumers have the ability to see what a brand stands for, or even an author, what are you about and what are your interests and do they align with mine, and supporting that. So I love that Lulu is a B Corp. I think that we became certified in 2018 or the end of 2017. And that's always really meant a lot to me to work for a really value-based company. But I know that that's not always the most interesting thing for an author that's trying to build their brand. They're like, okay, well, who cares? What else are you doing? So other than that, we also have been really focused on making it easier for authors to connect with their readers directly or connect with their audience directly. So that's come in a lot of forms. We released an API, a free API in 2018. And then since then, we've been building on that with an app for Shopify. And very, very soon, I mean, so if this comes out in March, towards the end of March, we will be releasing a new e-commerce integration that I'm very excited about as well. And so, yes.
You've been teasing me in the background about it. Like I'm sitting here with my NDA, like keeping my mouth shut.
I know. So I am thrilled that within a couple weeks, we'll be able to just sing from the rooftops that we have this. So it's really exciting. But what I see that Lulu is offering more than anyone else kind of in our space is autonomy for the author to really have the ability to keep their brand at the forefront, white label services, connect directly with their readers, get that transactional data that I was just talking about. And not a lot of other platforms are really focused on that, I don't think. So I see us as really someone that's championing the small business, the entrepreneur, the author that is realizing they can see their authorship and their writing as a business, and we're giving them the tools to be able to do that better.
Yeah, that's the part that I really love about you guys most, is the fact that you are setting up systems that help authors to succeed on their own terms rather than making this a transactional relationship. In other words, I go and publish over on Lulu, they pay me when they make sales on there, that's it. No, it's not like that. You guys have that Shopify integration and the API integration, and then potentially something coming here pretty soon that I can't talk about.
Yes.
So I'm really, really geeked up about things like that, because this really puts us in the driver's seat and we don't feel like we're beholden to any one single platform. So big kudos. I can't agree with you more about the innovation. I knew you were going to say that. But briefly, though, let me circle back around, because there's going to be some people scratching their heads going, what's a B Corp?
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking. So B Corporation is a for-profit company that's certified by the nonprofit B Labs to basically just meet more rigorous standards of transparency, accountability, working towards good for the environment. So it's a multi-pronged approach to how you look at your business, but essentially Lulu is very people-centric. So our authors, our employees, we want well-being to be at the forefront. But outside of that, there's also environmental impacts of when you make books, of course. So really trying to be intentional about how we spend our money, how we work with partners, how we work with printers to see, can we help elevate their response to our environment and making it a better place. So, not obviously print on demand is a great a great alternative to doing huge offset runs where you may have extra books that just end up getting pulped. So working on a model that the book is, I heard someone refer to it as bespoke the other day, and I really love that. But I love the idea that every book that Lulu makes is bespoke for you, whoever ordered it. We make it for you. So that helps us cut down on waste and just be more aware of our footprint in that way. And I think because we have the B Corp Foundation, we're constantly looking for ways to improve what we're doing in our office with our printers, and then with the way we treat our employees and the way we treat our authors as well. So it's a really robust way to kind of just say, hey, we know that we can be doing better. I think businesses can lead that charge, and we are one of them.
Yeah, nice. I'm glad we covered that, because I know if I disconnected this, there would be so many comments of people going, what's a B Corp? And they normally forget that there's a Google, but we have to beat Google for them. All right. You guys went through, like, seriously, you smell like smoke because you went through fire. Back in 2020, it was a rough patch. How are things faring since then? And can you share what went wrong?
Yeah, well, it's funny because people listening to this will be like, "Oh yeah, 2020 was a hard year for all of us," and it's right. I'm tempted to be
it
like,
"It wasn't Lulu hard."
right. I know to be like the pandemic, right? But yes, right at the cusp of the pandemic, we couldn't have planned it worse ourselves. So yeah, like right when the pandemic was starting is when we had this grandiose launch. I mean, just completely from soup to nuts, redoing everything, the user experience, the process, our tools and resources, everything was getting this massive facelift. And yeah, it happened right when everyone was going home, being locked down, quarantined, everything like that. So yeah, it was a very interesting time to add to the plight of the world, but we did. So we went with this launch, and there were definitely some hiccups along the way, which is probably a very kind way to recall that. But I think whenever you try to launch something and undertake something in the scale of what we did and migrate literally millions of files and millions of projects to something new, this applies really perfectly. But my favorite term in publishing is you don't know what you don't know. I never thought it could be as true as it felt when we went through this launch. But, I think it was just a lot of the perfect storm. So trying to do this in a pandemic where people were all home and everyone was really, I think, hyper affected by what we were doing, because when the pandemic started, everybody was like, great, like I would love to write, I'm going to get back to it. And our site was a bit in flux at that time. So we were just getting hammered on all sides. Like social media was a nightmare, if I'll be frank. Internally, we were trying to figure out what was going on, put out fires left and right. And so I think in retrospect, what went wrong? Well, I think the pandemic was not great. So if I could have planned that differently, I would have. But also, I just think anytime you undertake something and you really go forward with it, there's going to be things that you can't see and that you can't anticipate. So I think trying to migrate things at that scale was maybe something that we could have done differently. I think communication with our users, I know that part was really frustrating, especially post-launch. Just trying to kind of help people know that we're still here, we're still working on this. And it's really difficult. And so honestly, I commend everybody who stayed with us through that ride. We did have had some people that were just true fans of Lulu, deserved all the gold stars, that were like, hey, you've been around for 18 years. So I know that you've done good work. I'm going to stick through this. There are some people who, didn't feel that way, and that's okay. And you can do that too. But I think really what we learned through that is just how to work better as a team, how to be more responsive to our authors, and, maybe don't try to redo everything, at one time. Maybe just release, staggered releases instead of just flipping a switch at midnight one night and then hoping that when you wake up the next day, everything is refreshed and anew. So definitely a learning curve there, but I'm happy that we are at a much different and much better place today than we were then.
I think it'll be in our tell-all autobiographies when you and I retire, because I know I was on behind the scenes, and it was like watching a car wreck. I was just like, no, you see a friend going into a car wreck. It's not something you want to see. And I remember thinking, man, this is so bad. And we were working on the sponsorship with self-publishing with Dale at that time. And you were like, no, stop.
Abort. Yes. I mean, yeah, I think a testament to how much we all trusted the process, because we were like, all right, like day one, let's do this, excited. And, and I actually wrote a press release. It was like, I think the headline we ended with was like, Lulu makes it easier to sell books, harder to sell leggings, just because we get that all the time. And that never saw the light of day because we were busy trying to let everyone know that we were okay. It would be okay. Give us some time. We're working on it. But yeah, and I mean, thank you, because you definitely, you always worry when something like that happens. Who will be there, when the dust settles? And you definitely weren't. Anyone who's been through something like that, or through, a launch of a business or a new feature or anything, or even in the tech space for long enough, has seen, I think, the 24-hour cycle of things like being built and then being torn down. So anyone who stuck with us through that, again, thank you. Thank you.
Agreed on that one. As we start to wrap up today's podcast, I always like to ask this of my guests. What advice do you have for aspiring authors and self-publishers?
What advice do I have? Do your research and know your options. I mean, today is such a great time to be an author, an indie author. All the tools are at your fingertips. I mean, you don't have to rely on Amazon or even, Lulu's bookstore or anything that's established and has been working. That's great. But you can put together the package that's going to work best for you. So don't rush into anything. Don't feel like you don't have options. Don't feel like you have to do it like everybody else is doing it. If there's ever been a time for you to carve your own path and figure out what works for you, now is the time. And what's so great is that you have thousands, well, at least hundreds of years of records of people who have written books and started businesses and done new things and how they've messed up and failed. And so you have all that information. The keys are really in your hand, and the sky is the limit. And I wish I'm out of cliche things to say now that's like seize the day and hustle and grind or whatever. But really, if you are starting your journey and becoming an author or a publisher or any of these things, you have infinite resources, and you don't have to do it the way it's been done, and you don't have to do what people tell you to do. You can do your own thing and be successful at it. So trust yourself and take the time to research the options that are available to you.
Big thank you over to Chelsea Bennett. Chelsea is just an absolute gem and a rock star, and it'd mean the world to me if you would head on over to youtube.com/Lulu Press and get yourself subscribed, because you're going to really love some of the content if you enjoyed today's conversation with Chelsea. She's just a wealth of knowledge and a super positive person to have in your life. In the meantime, thank you so much for tuning into the weekly interview segment, and I will see you next week.